official. I now have my Portuguese visa and I am now officially in Portugal. I thought I'd make a video about the process because it's literally taken me 2 years. The process is not simple at all, and my visa even got refused in the process. So I kind of wanted to point out easy mistakes that can be made and how to avoid them as well. But just to cover the basics of the visa process, there are a few different visas that you can qualify to come and move to Portugal, but the only one that I had the potential to qualify for was the D8 visa, which means that if you work remotely and you earn a certain amount of money, you can come and you can live in Portugal. And of course, this is just my experience, so do bear that in mind that this isn't fact, because literally everyone's experience is so different. But this is just mine and I'm just sharing that with you. I'm also applying for the D8 national visa, which leads to residency, and I think that the process is slightly different if you're applying to stay for maybe 1 year, for an example. So I started looking into this visa about 2 years ago, and the first step naturally was making sure that you meet the salary requirements, which to be honest is quite a lot of money. You need €3,280 a month, which is 4 times the Portuguese minimum wage, which I have my own opinions on, but that's like a whole nother story. But this is actually where I was refused on my visa for the first time. And you might actually think, you know what, that's really stupid, because that's literally the first step and the easiest part to make sure that you meet the requirements. But actually, I was only off by about €11 a month, and I'm going to tell you how to avoid that if you kind of are on the fence or on the edge of having that salary. But just to note that when you are comparing the exchange rate for your salary, use the currency converter on the Bank of Portugal website rather than like Google exchange rate, as this is what they'll be using, and I've linked that website down below in the description section for you to have a look at. But my first advice would be that if you are applying with pay slips, make sure that if you were paying a pension, the pension is not a salary sacrifice, because that on your pay slip technically comes out of your salary and won't be counted as an income, and you know, they would just be looking at your total figure minus your pension, so that does have some sort of effect. So in the end, I actually ended up opting out of my pension altogether, because A, they're now actually starting to look at net salary as opposed to gross, so that means like after all your deductions, after tax, after student loan payments, so that figure is much smaller. And B, once I moved to Portugal, I would be a contractor anyway rather than an employee, so I just wouldn't be getting that pension, so it actually didn't really make much sense for me to have it anyway. The next piece of advice I would give on this would be that in the new year, the monthly income you need to earn is actually going to increase in line with the Portuguese wage. So after my first visa refusal, where my pension was included in my salary, I had my second appointment scheduled on the 11th of January. I was feeling super confident because, you know, I'd figured out why my visa was rejected, you know, I was confident that I had enough. Genuinely, on the 28th of December, I saw online that the visa requirements were going up on the 1st of January. So it's going to increase from €3,040 a month to €3,280 a month, which is a €240 increase a month, which is a lot. And obviously I couldn't get any appointments before January the 1st. So in that case, I was screwed. So I would say that if you are planning to move next year or the year after, don't take this figure right now as Bible, because it is going to be impacted by the Portuguese minimum wage. The actual visa appointment as well won't be with the Portuguese consulate. It's going to be with a company called VFS, which deals with a lot of countries in one go. And at the appointment, you will need to present around 15 types of documentation, which I'll take you through what they are and what you need to bring. So the first is proof that A, you actually have an appointment at VFS. So once you book your appointment, they will email you your confirmed appointment time. So make sure you print that out on the day, because you need to give it in to the person at VFS to get into the building. The second is that you need to bring with you your passport and also a copy of your passport. Technically, you also need to give your passport in, but if you are planning on travelling between your appointment and arriving in Portugal and therefore need to keep your passport so that you can travel, you'll need to print off proof that you're travelling in between that time. So that can be an email confirmation or your actual boarding pass, whatever, as long as you've actually got it printed out with you. Because when I went to my first appointment, I was like, oh, you know, look, I've just got this flight in a week or whatever, I need to keep my passport. But that actually needs to go in your documentation, so that when it gets sent to the Portuguese consulate and they're like, where's the passport, they actually know that it's because you need it for travel. You'll also need to have a filled out visa application form, which you can find on the Portuguese embassy website. To go on that application form, you will need a photo of yourself with dimensions of 3.5 times 4.5 centimeters. I got mine done at Snappy Snaps, as they already kind of know all those dimensions for you for all these sorts of applications, so you don't really need to think about that. You also need a personal statement explaining the reasons for applying for a visa and why you want to move to Portugal. So obviously mine was that my boyfriend lives here, you know, we wanted to move in together and start a life here, and why I like Portugal, and you know, all that sort of thing. But it needs to be signed by you as well. The seventh thing is that as part of the requirements, it means that you need to have a remote job. So you need to print out a copy of your work contract, and that's probably the biggest documentation that you need. Mine is like 20 pages, but yeah, you need to prove that you have that job essentially. You then need to have a signed declaration from your employer saying and stating that you can work remotely as well. To prove that you also meet the salary requirements of a value of 3,280 euros, you need to have proof of your last 3 pay slips or invoices. You also need 3 of your last bank statements, which should equate to 10,000 euros. And both of these, your salary and your bank statement, can be in any currency, as the Portuguese consulate will check the exchange rate to make sure that that value meets the value in euros. You also need to prove that you have accommodation already covered for your time there. So for me, I didn't actually go out beforehand and find my own flat, as there is another method to get this part done if you know someone in Portugal, as that person can vouch for you to have accommodation ready at the beginning for you and saying that they can, like, you can come and stay with them. And that's the route that I took, because obviously my boyfriend and his family live here. You just need to make sure that whoever's filling out that form for you, you need to have a copy of their ID, whether it's passport or national ID, and some sort of proof that they live at the address they put down on the form as part of the documentation as well. On top of this, you need travel insurance valid for 6 months. I recommend Access Schengen, which costs around £280, I think, but they do also reimburse you if you get your visa rejected, which obviously is not the main aim of why you're going to choose Access Schengen, but you know, it does come in handy if it happens to you, because naturally you're not applying with the expectation of being rejected. But yeah, really handy. You also need proof that you have no criminal record in the UK. The recommended check to have is an Acro police certificate, which costs about £65, and it does take about a month to process, so make sure you don't leave that step too late before your VFS appointment. But you also need Portugal to do a criminal record check on you, so there is another film to be formed and signed. Lastly, you need to prove your UK address with a P60 as well, so make sure you have that printed out. As you can see, lots of documents to provide, so I actually ended up having like a huge folder that I was lugging with me. Lugging is so dramatic, it was not that big, but I had a folder that I brought with me to the centre and was just going through the folder as they asked for the documentation in the appointment. If you do forget to print something out, at least at the centre I went to, which was in London, they have printing services available, but you know, it is always a bit of a hassle, and the one time I actually ended up needing to use it, I was genuinely queuing for over an hour. Just like, it was mental. You had to go downstairs, and the area had no internet because it was downstairs, so people that were trying to, like, I don't know, say if you had like a Google email, and Google will send you like a verification code, people were running upstairs to get the verification code that was sent to them, come back downstairs to log into their email. It was honestly like insane, and there were only 3 computers, and you had to keep paying to use those computers as well. It was honestly like so horrendous, and then after that's all done, you have to kind of like go back upstairs to your cubicle that you were in, wait for the next person to finish their appointment, and then sneak in your documents. It's horrible, so just try and not get into that situation. Saying that, I think it is better now. I think they now have printing services outside, but just try and make sure they have everything with you. On my last appointment, I also had the guy that I was with tell me that I needed to have a copy of the passport of the person that had filled out my terms of responsibility form, despite me already providing their national ID, which I knew I didn't need because I'd already had my application twice, and I'd always provided the national ID and it had never been a problem. So that was kind of like stressful, because he was telling me that I should go and print it out, but I ended up not, because I knew it wasn't a problem. But I guess because the people at VFS work with all sorts of countries, that, I don't know, maybe the rules are slightly different for each one, because it was fine. But on to what happens with rejections or successes. Bear in mind that at the end of your VFS appointment, they tell you that the timeline for processing the visa is about 60 days, and that's working days, so it's about 2 months. So in all, I had 3 appointments, so lots of experience in this department. But my first was so peak because, again, like, you don't go to the appointment expecting to have a refusal, so I genuinely thought that everything would be fine. Then, literally, the next day, I received an email saying that they were intending to reject my application. So that one moved really fast. So I guess that's kind of good. But I was so upset. And I also received the email at work. So when I first saw it, I was like super excited that I'd made my day, opened it properly. Immediate heart drop. No, like, it's not done. And then after that, you kind of have 10 days to change their mind. So I drafted up proof to prove that, you know, I'd met the salary requirements, but as you know, this was my situation with the pension that I didn't quite realise yet. So it didn't work, and I received an email a couple of weeks saying later that it was officially rejected. So I was mortified. Like, I didn't know what to do, because I was like, okay, well, that's it, you know, like, I've been, like, I can't apply for another visa again, like, I'm blacklisted, like, I don't know. I was literally thinking the worst, and I was really nervous that I wasn't going to be able to apply again. But then after that, you can actually appeal this decision, which costs around £60. So I did that because, you know, I was really confident. I felt that this was a misjustice. And after I'd applied, or after I'd appealed, I actually went on holiday. So I was tracking my application through this VFS tracker which they give you, and saw that my application had been dispatched back to VFS. So I felt happy again, so I thought, you know what, maybe my appeal has worked. They've accepted it. I didn't hear anything more for about a week, so I decided to call VFS, who told me that my application was already there for about a week, so I could come and collect it. I didn't know how to feel, because I was really annoyed that actually the VFS tracker was crap, and I had to call up to be like, what's going on? But I was also really unsure about what the news was. So I went to the VFS site in Liverpool Street, queued up. They give you like a number, you go to a cubicle, they give you an envelope. Immediately opened up the envelope. I'm sorry to say that your visa blah 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 blah. So now that I look back at it, it's actually really funny, but at the moment, like, I was actually really upset. It's literally not funny. I'm just trauma laughing. It's not funny. I was fuming. Like, I literally felt like my time had been wasted. Like, why have I come all the way to this place for you to tell me no? I was so mortified. But then the second appointment I had, which was the one in January, I received an intention to reject a week after, so not the next day. So even then I was feeling a little bit confident, even though I kind of knew that it was going to be rejected because the salary requirements had gone up. But I was like, you know what? The last time I heard after the next day, so maybe I'm fine. But no, a week later that email came through with the intention to reject again. But yeah, I went through that whole process again about giving them more proof, and then they actually emailed me the official rejection about a week after that. And I got a letter as well, so that felt much better, because then my time wasn't being wasted. You know, I was just getting an email, no, like I didn't need to go anywhere, so I felt a bit better with that one. But my last appointment I had on the 3rd of July this year, and I was super anxious because, you know, I'd already had 2 rejections, and if that guy at VFS was right and I did actually need to provide the passport, I'd have to go through the whole thing again. And so that's the passport of the person that was filling out my terms of responsibility, by the way. But yeah, I just didn't want to go through that whole thing again, even though like I felt that I'd met the requirements of everything else. It was just going to be that. But yeah, it's just long, isn't it? But yeah, so then at that point I'd gone on holiday again. I was checking my email every day, I was checking my junk email every day, the VFS tracker. Nothing was shifting on that VFS tracker. It's like, it's not very reliable at all. I'm pretty sure if I checked it again right now, it would still say like your application's been dispatched, which is the first step, and nothing more. So it's very unreliable. But yeah, I heard nothing. I was literally so stressed that I would receive a negative email maybe a few weeks later, because the first appointment I heard back the first day, then then my second appointment I heard back a week later. So I was like, oh my god, what if this time I don't hear back for a month and they're telling me no? I was so stressed. Like, it was just horrible. I was even checking Facebook groups, Reddit pages, just to see people's experiences and people's timelines for people that had applied at a similar time for me. And I'd seen actually that a lot of people were hearing back that there were significant delays in the process, up to a further month. So that stressed me out even further, because I was like, oh my god, what if they haven't even looked at my application yet, and then my negative email is still going to come through. It was horrible. But I didn't hear anything until 7 weeks later, when I received an email saying that my visa was accepted. I was so shocked, because I was really expecting to have to wait a month more to hear anything, and it actually came within the original 60 days, so I was super lucky that, you know, it was actually in this timeline. I had actually seen online that people had applied earlier in the year, had received news much quicker, like around the 1 month mark. So I think actually also because it was summer, it's quite a hectic season where, you know, workers are on holiday, so that kind of slows down the process a little bit more. But I can't complain, because it was within the original 60 days. But as I kept my passport, as I was staying in Portugal for a while before I had my application, they asked me in that email when I could come into the Portuguese consulate to give them my passport so that they could put visa in. I then went to the consulate. I then went to the consulate the next week, where you arrive, you have to like register because they know that you're coming in. I gave them my passport, they stamped it right there and then. I wasn't sure if they were going to post it back, but no, they literally give it to you right there and then, as well as my AMA appointment that I received, which is kind of the next process that I'm at the moment and having when applying for my residency. But yeah, I was literally in and out within 20 minutes. It was a really simple process. Yeah, really smooth. But yeah, that was my long experience over the last 2 years. Again, my experience, it's not factually the case for everyone, but this is the sort of information that I was looking for during the process that I was going through, as I wanted to see other people's experiences and how that process sort of worked for them. That was mine. So I hope that was useful. But yeah, do stay along for my journey, as I am now officially living in Lisbon. So kind of next steps for me, again, applying for my residency, making friends. Yeah, just starting my new chapter out here. So I'm really excited for it.